Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Veloz webinar, our first webinar of 2021, California Leadership, Underpresent Zero Emissions for New Cars and Trucks by 2035. I'm really excited to be here with you here today and with our speakers. My name is Lisa Kilodikis. I'm Programs Director here at Veloz. After the inauguration yesterday, I think we all can truly say it feels like a new year, a new administration, and there are a lot of new opportunities to reach the goal of zero emissions for new cars and trucks by 2035. I'm looking forward to a lively discussion with our Executive Director, Josh Boone, and key experts in transportation electrification. Today, we are placing all of your microphones on mute to minimize feedback, and we'll be answering audience questions after the facilitated Q&A. Feel free to ask a question anytime using the Q&A menu feature in the menu bar. I want to note that we are recording this webinar and we do plan to share and post the recording on the Veloz website in the next few days. So before I introduce our moderator and speakers today, I'd like to give you a little bit of background about Veloz. Veloz is a public-private partnership made up, a public-private nonprofit made up of almost 40 members, including automakers, utilities, local government, third-party charging providers, transportation network companies, nonprofits, and others. You can see from the logos on this slide that the membership is growing, it's broad, diverse, and growing. Veloz aims to inspire Californians to drive electric through our statewide awareness campaign called Electric for All, public forums, webinars, networking, and other programs. Our goal is to continue to engage entities and organizations. So if you are not a member, we welcome you and invite you to join us. Please visit the Join Us webpage at veloz.org. Veloz, I'd also like to introduce to you and showcase our sales dashboard. Veloz produces an electric car sales dashboard that we publish quarterly on our website. We are excited about a recent partnership with the California Energy Commission and Air Resources Board for electric car sales and infrastructure data in California. Our sales dashboard includes California sales, US sales, California chargers, California hydrogen stations, and makes and models. This includes battery electric cars, plug-in hybrid electric cars, and fuel cell electric cars in our sales numbers. This slide shows us data as of September of 2020, and we are looking forward to including Q4 of 2020 about the beginning of February. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Well, today we have Annalisa Bevan, Assistant Division Chief, Sustainable Transportation and Communities Division with the California Air Resources Board. We have Cynthia Williams, Global Director of Sustainability, Homologation, and Compliance with Ford Motor Company. Mike Matten, Manager, Energy, Environment, and Electrification Policy with General Motors. David Schlossberg, Vice President, Energy Market Operations with NLX. Nancy Sutley, Senior Assistant General Manager of External and Regulatory Affairs and Chief Sustainable Officer of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And Sam Ahrens, Director of Sustainability with Lyft. And now I'd like to turn it over to Josh Boone, our Executive Director here at Veloz, who will facilitate the Q&A. So welcome everyone, and we're excited about the conversation.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And I think we'll start with kind of a moderated discussion here, and then we'll save a few minutes at the end for a Q&A from all of you that are participating with us today. So thank you for joining us. So our topic today, of course, is California Leadership, 100% zero emission vehicle cars and trucks by 2035. So I'd like to start the discussion by asking Annalisa Bevan from ARB a question. So Annalisa, from your perspective, can you give us a peek kind of behind the curtain on CARB's role in getting to the governor's new ZEV executive order?
Sure, thank you, Josh. So CARB's long been involved in trying to achieve the state's health-based air quality standards and our climate targets. And as part of that, we engage in regulation and planning, modeling, incentives, and things like that. So in all of our efforts to model and plan for reaching those health-based air quality standards and climate.
I don't think anybody can hear.
Yeah, I think
you,
Annalisa, you're
Annalisa.
really hard to hear. So I didn't know if that was just me.
Shoot, that's troubling.
You were fine earlier.
Yeah. I am not sure what to suggest. Do you want to take another question with somebody else, and I will try and change my microphone situation?
Sure, yeah, I can hear you, Annalisa. It's just kind of quiet. So maybe we can move on while you work on your audio, and we'll come back to you. But kind of in the similar spirit, let's move to you, Cynthia from Ford. With the excitement around the launch of your new Ford Mustang Mach-E product, can you share with our audience today some specific ways, in addition to your vehicles, that Ford is supporting California's 2035 EV goal?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh, for the question. Well, at Ford, we believe, we know climate change is real, and we're determined to do our part to make sure that we can fight it. And we're delivering great vehicles, great services to the customers. And in California, or in the U.S., California has been leading the way with climate change. So we are proud, as Ford, to stand with California on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so, and those are in line with the Paris Agreement, and also it paves the way for Ford to meet its carbon neutrality goals by 2050. At Ford, we've been building cars for nearly 120 years, and so we have a lot of experience to bring, great products to customers. We're so excited to be launching our new Mustang Mach-E. We're also electrifying other iconic products such as our F-150, BEV, and also the Transit EV that's coming, which will, it's a commercial vehicle. We'll provide a commercial vehicle electric solution for the commercial customers. We're excited. If you haven't got your orders in, please do. Mach-E's coming out. I had the chance to drive one a couple months ago, and really, it's exciting. It's an exciting vehicle, and you're gonna love it. Also, in terms of partnering with our Argo AI partnership, we're going to be delivering services with autonomous vehicle solutions as well. In addition, we have Spin that also has e-scooters that's already providing convenient, affordable electrified solutions. So again, we're here. We're bringing great products and can't wait to be part of the solution. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great, Cynthia. And I just might note that you are a new board director at Veloz. So welcome to the Veloz leadership team. And I have ridden in your Mustang Mach-E, but I am waiting for the chance to actually get behind the wheel and drive it. So it's a beautiful product, and we're really excited that you're bringing that to market.
Thanks, Josh.
So along the same line, let's go to Mike at GM. So you've got a whole line of products coming as well, Mike. You've got your Cadillac Lyriq, your new van and Hummer EV truck. So what else is GM doing to prepare to meet the executive order? What kind of supporting efforts, in addition to producing vehicles, is GM working on?
Sure. So thanks, Josh, for having me and asking the question. And before I start about supporting efforts, just want to fill in a few more products, just in case people didn't hear about the van. It's our Bright Drop electric delivery solution that our CEO, Mary Barra, announced at CES last week. We're really excited. We feel that is certainly an area that's going to get electrified quickly. And in the next month, you are going to hear a lot of activity around the refreshed Chevrolet Bolt EV, as well as the Bolt EUV, another vehicle off of that platform. So affordable, long-range BEV solutions. The portfolio is just getting bigger, and we feel that's really important to grow the market. Is not just to have one vehicle; it's really a portfolio for every use, every pocketbook, to try and get those out there. But beyond the products, our organization, GM, going through a substantial transformation, and you've really just seen the tip of the iceberg with literally rebranding the GM logo.
Yeah.
In term and this everybody in. Sorry, there's an echo. maybe I'll continue. So it's the Everybody In campaign. You'll see a lot of advertisements around that. It's really, again, making all these vehicles accessible, having a very inclusive portfolio and an electric future for all. On the dealer side, we have launched, and consumer side, we've launched what we call Bolt EV Academy, a series of 15 about 2-minute long snippets, really digestible, everything you wanted to know about an EV, trying to answer all those questions. And I guess the other big move that we've done to try and support this transformation to EVs is, and you might have heard of this, we have actually created an entire organization to redefine the EV customer experience, led by one of our executives, Travis Hester. So it's really all about, again, from the buying experience, simplifying the EV purchase, to creating the EV charging ecosystem, so it's easy to charge and easy to pay for that charge if necessary, to over-the-air updates. So again, with using what we've learned with our experience with EVs, with our OnStar telematics system, we think there's a really great opportunity to kind of redefine that customer experience. And again, as COVID has taught us, the customer expectation in the retail environment, even for vehicles, is different now. And we're going to take this opportunity with EVs to really get in touch with that and really redefine what it means to buy and own an EV. So we're really excited on multiple different fronts about all of the supporting work that we're going with, and you're going to see some ads coming out too. I know that's always a big topic of advertising. You will absolutely see that. I can't give anything away, but there's a couple events that might be coming up in the next couple of months that you might see some advertising on.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Mike. And for those of you that haven't seen it, we launched our new brand neutral 40 million reasons to go electric campaign today. And both your product, your Mach-E, Cynthia, is in it, as well as your Bolt EV and your new Hummer EV truck, Mike. So really excited about all of that product that you guys are bringing to market. Okay, let's go back and see if Annalisa has got her audio reconfigured. Can you hear me, Annalisa?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear. Thank you for
Okay, great.
on that.
I'm really sorry about that. You had asked to have a peek behind the curtain in CARB's role in getting to the EO, and that's really down
right.
to our role in modeling what it will take to get to our health-based air quality standards and climate goals. And as we've been doing that over the years, we've been forecasting that we would need to get to 100% ZEVs. And really to do that, to see 100% ZEVs on road by 2050, we need to be at new car sales being 100% by about 2035. So that's where we've had a role in helping guide where that target should be set. And then in terms of all of the programs that we have in the works to help achieve that, that sort of helped shape the form of the EO.
Yeah, that's great. And, when the EO was announced, there was a lot of questions in the media about, is this a new idea that California has come up with? Is it something that they've been working on for a while? And I don't know if you can speak to that, but it sounds like this is, a future that's been needed for a while and something that's been, at least from a planning perspective, the state has known that we need to go there. So I don't know if you have anything to add color there or not, but.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we've known for quite some time. We've been forecasting this in our regulatory activity that we would need to go to 100%. But having the governor say it in an executive order really helps to coalesce around that as a principal target, not just for CARB, not just for our regulatory activities, but really for developing an entire ecosystem that supports growing a zero emission market. Everything from infrastructure to public awareness, and any financial incentives that are needed to help grow the market.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we all know that to move this market forward, it takes an ecosystem and an entire chain of people working to push it forward. So we've heard from CARB, a state agency. We've heard from two top automakers. David, I'd like to go to you at NLX and just understand from your perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, what's needed in order to meet the new executive order?
Sure, Josh. I'd be happy to. If you don't mind, I'll just give a quick note about an LX. Not everyone
please.
may be familiar with who an LX is. So first and foremost for this audience, an LX is the manufacturer of the best-selling residential EV charging station, the Juice Box. We also sell charging stations for the commercial, municipal spaces, fleet spaces, and also provide fast charging as well as level 2 AC charging. We provide not just hardware, but also software and services. So how do we make sure that these EV charging assets, once they go into the ground, provide benefits to the site host, to the community, and also to the grid by making sure that charging happens at the right times when it's most beneficial. But we are in the infrastructure business, deploying infrastructure, making sure that the policy makes sense so that infrastructure can get on the ground. So California obviously has a long history of promoting energy infrastructure, but even EV charging. So this isn't new. We have lots of good structures in place. Now the need is to really augment them to get even greater scale. Some of you may be familiar. We have the California Energy Commission runs the Cal EVIP or Cal EVIP, depending on how you've heard it before. So the California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. Well, we can obviously use that, but there's potential for new program structures to actually allocate some of the additional monies that the governor and the legislature have earmarked or are likely to approve for EV infrastructure. And those programs might be needed to actually target certain use cases or certain areas of the state to make sure that we get the infrastructure where we need it. So a couple of years ago, the legislature passed AB 2127. Lots of the industry came together with NGOs to identify this need to do an assessment of where infrastructure is needed in California if we're really to electrify all those sources of transportation. So now that the CEC has done a great job of building up that assessment, now the funding entities can make sure that we have programs in place to make sure we get the assets where we need them. And also there's opportunities for innovative approaches to deploying that capital, so potentially some competitive procurements. Right now, it's sort of a first come, first serve for infrastructure dollars, but maybe there's a way to get the most efficient infrastructure and the highest and best uses, best places through competitive programs. Now, we already have utility programs. We call them make ready, which means it's kind of a strange terminology, but utilities want to make the grid ready for electric vehicles and EV charging. And so how do we utilize those authorizations that the legislature and the public utility commissions have given to utilities to spend money to upgrade our infrastructure? We have a lot of new construction in the state, but we have a lot of old construction, and old construction means older grids. So if we want to put in, a dozen chargers at your small office or megawatts of charging at that depot that's doing last mile deliveries, we need a grid that can support that. And so these make ready programs authorize the utilities to spend ratepayer money because it provides a societal and a ratepayer benefit to invest in that infrastructure, to increase the amount of electricity flowing through our wires and do it in a clean way. But in order to reach these goals, we're going to need to be able to actually interconnect those projects that have we're bringing capacity to. So we need permitting, same things we've learned in California for solar and batteries now. We're going to need permitting, streamlining. We need to use technology and software that companies like ourselves and others provide to control this new consumption in a way that doesn't tax the grid. So it's something called automated load management or load balancing. There are a lot of different terminology for it, but the PUC is actually studying right now, how do we incentivize facilities, technology providers to use technology to make sure that we don't stress the grid at the wrong times or just at all at the right place, so we can get EV charging connected immediately and still provide the service that those sites need by making sure that we don't act like our grid needs to have every single car plugged in at the same time and make sure that the grid can support that. That's not how EV charging works. It's a random a random walk of when things are needing to be charged, and how do we utilize technology to make sure that when there is some extra need for charging, if everyone plugged in at the same time, that we balance that out in a smart way. And then finally, I say financing. The government might be able to help bring third-party financing to the space, and whether that's through programs we have like the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, just encouraging innovative companies to bring financing. And there might be things like green banks that we always talk about across this country, but how do we bring them to fruition in California to support potentially those sites that want to electrify but don't have the credit, a credit rating from a large rating agency, but that are still credit worthy on some level.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Maybe we can move, since we're talking about grid-related issues, to you, Nancy, who is also a relatively new member to Veloz's leadership team. So we welcome you. The state, when we talked a little bit about this in our prep calls, calling for more infrastructure. It's been calling for more charging infrastructure for a while, but now there's a new emphasis on it as it relates to the 2035 ZEV goal. More funding is being proposed in the budget for next year. But beyond funding, what are some of the top 1 to 2, 3 challenges that we need to overcome to stay on track as it relates to this whole paradigm shift to charging and refueling in a different way with electric vehicles?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think maybe I would just pick up a little bit where David was talking about, the need to understand sort of better how charging will affect the grid. So, we've been helping in a couple of ways, in many ways, over the years. We offer rebates on EV chargers, or rebates on used EVs. We've done a number of different things sort of programmatically to help encourage transportation electrification in Los Angeles for a whole variety of reasons, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing air pollution, and helping to enhance mobility. So, I think funding is a big piece in terms of the infrastructure. The electric infrastructure in Los Angeles was largely built out in the 50s and the 60s, and for a different sort of different endpoints than a lot of cars and trucks and buses is running around. So I think utilities are pretty good at planning if they know what they're planning for. So I think that's one place, in addition to money, that the state could help us better understand sort of where, how, when, and the industry as well, the automakers and some of the charging companies, so that we can plan. I'll give you one example. We broke ground a few weeks ago on a big receiving station near LAX to help meet their increased load due to their major sort of modernization program that's going on. That'll add a people mover and lots of electric vehicle chargers, we hope, at the airport. And so it's really, for the first time in decades, we're adding that kind of infrastructure. So I think also thinking about how the charging needs of passenger cars, how does that affect the grid, and how can we help manage that? And then also on the medium and heavy duty side, where the loads are significant, and the DC fast charging as well. So just, I think, better coordination among the transportation planners and the utility planners would help. And really trying to understand what people's plans are so that we can plan for the grid. And then on the financial side, it's not just what's the aggregate amount of money we need to ensure that all this infrastructure is in place, but really who pays for it, how's it financed, what should be the responsibility of the utilities and their ratepayers. We've been using our LCFS credit proceeds to help fund our EV programs. And so, how does that supplement? And then really what's the private sector bringing to the table here? And then how do we make the best use of that money? So lots to think about.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of the utilities certainly play a key role, and I know you guys are doing a lot. So thank you. Let's go to you, Sam. I know this is not directly a utility question or an automaker question, but give us an update on what you all are doing at Lyft as it relates to this zero emission vehicle goal that the state now has, and how you're supporting drivers and kind of your whole platform.
Great, thanks, Josh, and hey, everybody. Great to be here this morning with you all. So I think as many people probably heard, back in June of last year, Lyft was the first ride-sharing company to adopt a goal of 100% electric vehicles on our platform by 2030. And that was actually a little bit before Governor Newsom's executive order. And so we were very pleased to see that follow on from the state kind of creating its own goal that really meshes very well with ours. And I think that the slight differences there, there's a 2030 versus 2035. There's kind of all vehicles in our case versus new sales in the executive order case. I think that makes a lot of sense because ride-sharing vehicles really ought to be the tip of the spear in this transition because of their relatively higher mileage. Ride-sharing cars tend to drive, quite a bit more than a personally owned car. Like, let's say, 3 to 5 times more, up to 50,000 miles a year, basically. And because, as many people here well know, EVs tend to, for the moment, cost more upfront than a gasoline car, but tend to have lower operating costs, meaning fueling and maintenance. And so what that means is your payback on the EV depends on how many miles you've driven, and the more miles per year you drive, the faster your payback will be. And for that reason, EVs really on ride sharing ought to be the ones to go first. So to have ride sharing kind of have this slightly earlier commitment and have it be for all vehicles makes a lot of sense. And then that can help to create a virtuous cycle where there is increased demand, which then it sends a market signal to our friends, our OEM friends here on the call, that we need more models, we need them to be cheaper, we need them to have better battery ranges, and then that in turn can lower the cost for kind of the rest of the overall vehicle ecosystem. In terms of what we're doing specifically to get there, we have a couple of great examples so far, and the foremost among them is actually in Colorado in 2019. Trying to remember what year is it even in this world we're living in. But back in 2019, we were able to work with the governor of Colorado and the state legislature to modify the state's EV tax credit. So similarly to the federal tax credit, Colorado has its own state tax credit, but it wasn't actually available for businesses. It was only available for personal consumers. And again, because of the very high mileages of ride-sharing vehicles, it makes some amount of sense to say, well, at least some of that incentive program ought to be going to high mileage fleet applications like ride-sharing, because for every dollar that the state is going to spend on this tax credit, it's going to get 3 to 5 times more emissions reductions per year if that dollar is putting an EV into a ride-sharing application versus just private hands. And so that argument did carry the day, and we were able to work with the government to modify that tax credit. And then, boom, within 4 or 5 months, we were able to bring 200 EVs into our Denver rental car program for rideshare drivers, which was the largest deployment of EVs in Colorado's history. So what we are seeking to do now is to sort of replicate that in other places, working not only with at the state level, but also with cities and air districts, and then of course the new administration. We have a lot of hope that we'll have some opportunities to make some positive changes there as well. So it's pretty exciting, and it's going to take all of us to push these policy changes forward, and I think we can do it, and I think we can have a big impact.
Yeah, that's great, exciting stuff. So we've talked a lot about EVs. We've talked about charging infrastructure. At Veloz, we promote all 3 zero-emission vehicle types, which include battery electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and fuel cell electric vehicles. So I want to go back to you, Annalisa, from a state agency perspective, and just ask what you see the role is of fuel cell electric vehicles and specifically hydrogen refueling infrastructure in meeting the governor's aggressive but exciting goal.
Right. So CARB also is technology neutral. We're very supportive of battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, plug-in hybrids. And we definitely see where all the technologies have their positives that may be more positive than another technology to meet specific utility needs or range or refueling. And so we're anticipating that hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric will play a role in meeting our goals of 100% new car sales in 2035. We do recognize that hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are, they're a little farther behind in the market development than battery electrics are. And there are differences in how you approach the infrastructure rollout, for example, and there are different other complementary policy considerations in infrastructure. For example, on the battery side, we're not only trying to create a public infrastructure network, but we're also supporting at-home charging. And that's different from hydrogen. Hydrogen is more like the traditional fueling network where we're seeing stations, corner stations that people go to like they go to a gas station. So it's a different approach, but it is still something that the state is very supportive of. And we do a great deal of analysis and work with industry on how to best efficiently and effectively roll that out to support commercialization. So we're excited by the growing network in California and its utility for the early customers.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just jump in there. We see hydrogen fuel cell technology as part of Ford's portfolio approach as well. It will definitely be required for some of the more energy intensive commercial vehicle applications. So definitely we see a role for hydrogen as well.
Great. Mike, do you have a perspective on it as the other automaker on this?
Yeah, I think I would agree with Cynthia more on we see it at least has potential on the more energy intensive heavy duty side at this point.
Okay.
But
great.
definitely a role in the future in a zero carbon transportation fleet.
Great. Okay, we'll go back to you, Cynthia. So it's 2021. We're 14 years away from 2035. In many ways, that seems like a long time, but it's a very short period of time. From your perspective, what do you see are the top, 1 to 3 challenges in meeting this goal? What are the pain points? What do we, as a collective group, need to be thinking about in terms of important milestones to meet?
Thanks, Josh, for that question. Well, from my perspective, I think progress requires public-private partnerships. So with all of us on the call here, smart infrastructure, as it's been noted, and also key resources that will encourage consumers to invest in electrified products. I think Sam mentioned, incentives are going to be required in terms of, his needs, in terms of, how they can afford the vehicles in the near term, and until the battery costs come down, we think incentives will play a critical role to getting consumers into these vehicles. So definitely, that's something that we see as critical. And as more volume increases, as the exciting vehicles come out, we need that infrastructure to increase along with the number of vehicles that are coming out. Because once consumers get into the vehicles and these barriers are knocked down, there's we just see infrastructure, or we see the acceleration of EVs just coming along right with it. So definitely infrastructure, incentives, those are all key, and also bringing battery costs down.
Okay, great. Mike, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I can just jump in there kind of to echo Cynthia's comments. And the way I like to think of it is kind of a traditional S-curve type of adoption, right? So I think right now we're very close, and it's a wildly overused term, but we're at an inflection point for EVs. And again, not only California, but nationally, right? We have to consider national kind of concerns. We want to sell our vehicles all over the country, and you know, get everybody into an electric vehicle. But that first inflection point where we are, where we're just starting to see the mass market turn, you know, dozens, if not hundreds of pure EV models coming out, you know, this is really the wrong time to pull back on incentives. Incentives are what makes that inflection point, we believe, that inflection point happen. So we absolutely, with Cynthia, we're still at a point, batteries have come down in price drastically. We know that. They're still really, 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 really expensive.
Right.
But moving on, let's move on to that second inflection point, because as we start to roll back from 100% in 2035, how do we get that last 10, 20, 30%, wherever that point is? Just it's a construct. And it really comes down, quite frankly, to infrastructure and how you, again, it's partly the grid, but how you solve the issue for somebody in a multi-unit dwelling, or somebody without a garage, or somebody that's renting, or on the HD side, a depot with massive energy needs. That infrastructure needs to increase, and that second inflection point is going to happen. There's going to be, I'll call it, laggards somehow for some reason. And I firmly believe infrastructure could really be a limiting factor in that second inflection point. So I would agree with Cynthia, and that's something that's not going to get solved tomorrow, but it's something that certainly California and the rest of the US really has to work on in the next several years to be ready for that future.
Can I jump in on that? Because
please, Nancy.
I think that's right. I mean, you know, we've been offering rebates, which would basically cover the cost of the charger. And for our commercial rebates, most of them are now going into apartment buildings, into multi-unit dwellings, to try to address just the issues that Mike was talking about. And you know, when we look at sort of where we would put chargers in, for example, DWP would, looking to try to fill in the gap, so making sure we're reaching all communities. I mean, we're putting chargers in at, for example, at our customer service centers in some parts of the city where the commercial charging companies aren't seeing necessarily those as the prime locations. But I think it really needs a lot more coordination to try to make sure that we're addressing all of that. And I think David mentioned the Energy Commission report that just came out around infrastructure needs, which is super helpful, because that means we are like, oh, okay, we need to sort of supercharge our efforts as well. But I think you need kind of a more sort of broader strategy that involves the utilities, that involves the cities, that involves the charging companies and the automakers. That's, you know, charging helpful here, more here. Let's make sure that we're reaching all communities. For example, you get a higher level of rebate if you install a charger in a disadvantaged community. That's a decision we've made. So I think really trying to think about kind of an overall strategy to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, because I think the needs are certainly evolving quicker than maybe even we thought just a few months ago.
Yeah, that's great. And your last few comments are a great segue into the important topic of how, Nancy, and this will be a question for you too, Sam, how do we ensure our communities of opportunity benefit when it comes to our efforts on zero emission vehicle infrastructure or zero emission vehicle rollout? And what is LADWP's perspective on that? You started to talk about it in terms of incentives.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to, to ensure that a couple of things. So one, when we're measuring, so we have a whole sort of metrics program around equity. So trying to understand using CalEnviro screens, sort of not just our EV chargers, but lots of our programs. So that will continue to amp up. And we've tried to design some of our programs to increase the incentive to ensure that EVs are reaching disadvantaged communities. So it's at a higher level of rebate. We have a used EV rebate that we offer. Now all the utilities in California are working on the point of sale rebate program, which just launched, the California Clean Fuel Rewards. So so we're trying to really consider how we reach disadvantaged communities. I think the other is to think broadly about mobility. So as for example, the MTA, Metro, and LADOT that runs the short line buses are both committed to have their bus fleets 100% electric by 2030. So that's a huge charging need. So we're working closely with both of those entities, and that's a way a lot of people get around Los Angeles. So I think thinking broadly, but being intentional and deliberate about thinking about how we reach disadvantaged communities. And then I think the last thing is really around the outreach, because I think there still is not enough public education around the benefits of electric vehicles for everyone, including those people who live in disadvantaged communities.
Great. Well, we're running out of time. It's hard to believe, but I want to go to you, Sam, on a similar topic. My understanding is many of your drivers are low income, and I'm just interested in how Lyft thinks about that as it relates to meeting the ZEV EO goal in 2035.
Yeah, I spoke a little bit earlier about kind of the outsized environmental benefits that there are to focusing on ride sharing as kind of a first area to electrify. And I think a lot of those same general themes would apply from an equity perspective, because if you actually look at who the driver population is, and we do this once a year through our economic impact report, actually, which will be coming out, I think, very soon. In last year's report, we found that 66% of drivers self-identify with a minority community. And these are some of the very communities that already have been suffering for years from worse air quality and worse health outcomes, and then also worse COVID outcomes because of all those factors. So we think that focusing on ride sharing can actually help to not only get clean technology into the hands of communities that so far have been largely left out of the clean energy revolution, but also help to ameliorate those very health impacts that have been plaguing these communities for so long. Now, how do you do it? This really gets to, one of the participants asked the question, I'm not sure if it's visible to everybody, but how are we planning to make this happen and get drivers to switch to EVs? Basically, this is not going to happen unless it makes economic sense for the drivers. Many drivers do think about climate and do care about climate. Many drivers may not have that as their primary concern. They're doing rideshare driving because they want to earn money doing it. And if they can earn more money, have a higher net earnings by driving an EV, that's how we're going to get there. And so not only do incentives that we've been talking about earlier become important, but also the charging. Not only do we need more DCFC, fast charging locations, in places that Nancy was talking about, for example, but we also need at-home charging. I'm talking about overnight level 2 charging, because that's not only cheaper than fast charging, given that there's fewer large-scale infrastructure upgrades that are typically needed, but it's also a much more convenient charging experience, because it's just like your phone. You go home, you plug it in at night, you wake up in the morning, and boom, you're good to go. You don't have to stop in the middle of the day to charge, even at a fast charger, which is still slower than gasoline charging, and lose that potential revenue you could have been making if you had been able to keep driving. So I think by focusing on getting the capital costs down through incentives and then through additional technological improvements that we're going to need our OEM and kind of battery partners to keep working on, we also need to solve this charging problem and make the charging cheaper, make it far more ubiquitous, get much more significant levels of at-home charging installed in multi-unit dwellings, which is not easy. It's that's one of the
Right.
hardest problems of all. But I think we need to do it. And if we can get there, then we can make this value proposition so compelling that drivers would be silly not to switch to an EV. And we're only going to succeed if we can make that statement come to pass.
That's great. Well, we are essentially out of time, but I want to do a quick lightning round final question to all of you. So you got 3 or 4 word response, get it ready. And it is in this context, we've got a new federal administration. I think this field and the sector of EV and electrification is going to grow. What is your one wish for 2021 in order to move your mission forward? Veloz's mission is to help as quickly as possible move transportation electrification forward. In part, I know that is your mission. What is your one wish? And I'm going to start with David.
It's a good question. You put me on the spot right at the beginning. I mean, my one wish is just that we've already seen the beginning of it. You watch a Super Bowl last year and there were 3, 4, 5 electric vehicle commercials, that just EVs, that the default assumption from the average, American consumer is that this is a thing. Like, people get electric cars. So the next time I go to get, a car or rent a car or whatever, let's try the EV. And I think that the automakers have kind of hit that point where their advertising very commonly is now touching on electric as a part of a portfolio, not necessarily on a standalone, but sometimes on a standalone, and totally exciting and delighting people.
That's great. I'm going to go to you, Annalisa, really quickly. What's your one wish?
I think mine is very similar to Veloz, and just that people know about the benefits of driving electric and are at a point in their understanding of the technology and its benefits that they're considering buying one the next time they're in the market for a car, whether it's new or used.
That's great. How about yours, Cynthia?
Triple the infrastructure.
Awesome. Mike?
I love what Veloz is doing on the outreach and messaging. My one wish is on the federal level, a redo of the incentive structure, so we're not at a $7,000 disadvantage to other companies. At a state level, a reinstatement of the CVRP.
Great. How about you, Nancy? Your
money,
one wish.
money. That's 4 words. I just think the financing and the dollars, and then we got lots of smart people who can figure out how to get it done.
Great. And last but not least, what is your one wish, Sam?
I go with Nancy. Make it rain. I think that we have a chance to build back better. This is the new administration's priority. We can work to solve climate. We can work to solve economic inequality. We can work to solve racial injustice. We can do all of this, and we can do it all as a big program. So I'm looking forward to what's coming out, and I think there's going to be a lot of great opportunity to do this.
That's great. Well, thank you all for participating in this discussion. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, so we'll have to do it again all year. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Lisa for the next piece of our webinar here.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks for that great discussion, everybody. Appreciate it. And I know our audience is really excited to hear from you all as well. I'm going to ask a couple questions. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. We have way too many, unfortunately, than we can get to in the time we have. So I'm going to start with a question for Annalisa. Plug-in hybrids are part of the ZEV equation, or they have been. What kind of role do they play as we look towards 2035 and the fact that, they do have a combustion engine and how, they are considered a ZEV now, but what do you see the future in the role of plug-in hybrids?
That's a really great question, and one that we're asking ourselves over the next year as we develop the Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulation. We'll be looking at what role they play, what impacts including them in the ZEV, continuing to include them in the ZEV regulation will play, and how we define a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Is it a gasoline car with some all-electric range, or is it an electric car that has some gasoline range? What utilities, what drive cycles are particularly difficult to reach with PureZev or a battery electric or hydrogen that we might need to have a plug-in hybrid for. So these are the questions that we're asking ourselves as well, and something we'll be looking for input from the car companies, from consumers as we move forward over the next 12 months or so.
Great
Great
thank
question.
you. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I agree. So now I'm going to ask Cynthia and Mike a question. So, we hear about all the new trucks and, larger electric cars coming to market. And I mean, everyone's really excited. But how do you really appeal to this segment? The folks that are looking to drive, the utility of the car, what people are looking for, towing, the use that, the segment is looking for in a truck. So how do you appeal to them as you're about to bring these types of larger cars to market? I'll start with Mike, and then we'll turn over to Cynthia.
Yeah, I think you appeal once you put 300 or 350 miles of range in a battery into a vehicle. You make that truck really fun to drive, right? And I think it's about appealing to that. And you saw a lot of the things we did with the Hummer EV that are going to trickle down into other products, no doubt. But you have to concentrate on the benefits, but also, address that. And I think quite frankly, towing is something that we need to figure out, particularly the edge cases, and particularly as you move up in the classes for the heavy duty. I think that's where those extreme edge cases become a little different, and it's not about how much you can tow, it's how far you can tow. And it becomes, but I think these vehicles, these trucks, again, with the energy we're putting into them, with 1,000 horsepower, with 11,500 pound-feet of torque, there's going to be plenty of energy, plenty of specs that really appeal to that demographic and that buyer. So I'm really excited about that. But again, I'm not trying to ignore those edge cases that there's some technology development, and I think Cynthia would agree. There's technology development that still needs to occur to really solve some of those really edge cases that some people require.
Absolutely, Mike. And I'll just add what we look at is how do we provide that functionality that customer is looking for. And so, for example, our F-150 hybrid, power up, you'll be able to use your tools and things like that. You'll be able to take it to work. It's a functional vehicle. It gets the job done. And so what we look at the end of the day, what does it take to make sure that consumer or that business is able to do their job and their function? And so that's our goal. That's what we're looking to do. And that's why we're looking to, provide these different types of solutions for different customers, whether it's a commercial vehicle customer or a resident, just a everyday customer. So we're looking at functionality.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to see those come to market. Our next question, I was trying to get some variety here with our questions. Nancy, there's a question about streetlight charging in LA, and is it working? Does it get used a lot? And how's that going in Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, it's being deployed. You can see them around LA. We've been looking also at using our power poles. I mean, the good news is, literally every street in Los Angeles has electricity. So, trying to find ways to tap into that using our public parking lots, the DOT parking lots and others. So really trying to offer a variety of places where people can charge and make it visible so that people know where they can charge. I think EV drivers are pretty good at figuring out where the chargers are, but really trying to think about where people will charge. And for example, we have chargers in our Crenshaw Customer Service Center in South Los Angeles. It's across the street from a shopping mall. So they get used a lot because people can come to that area, whether they're there to pay their DWP bill or not. They can go and charge there. So I think we're trying to think broadly about using all those options. So we we're excited, and we've met our, we set a goal for to get 10,000 publicly available chargers in Los Angeles by the end of 2021, and we met it before the end of 2020. So, but now we got more work to do. Thanks.
Good job. I was looking for one of those emoticons, but I couldn't find one in this format, but that's great news, and thanks for that update. So with that, I know, I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I really appreciate everyone's conversation and what we did get to today. So I'm just going to wrap it up now with a few slides about some upcoming activities for Veloz. So I'm going to share my screen again. Hopefully you all can see it. So as Josh mentioned earlier, I think I made a nod to the fact that we are so excited to have released our latest Electric for All campaign called 40 Million Reasons to Go Electric. It features a 2.5-minute, what we're calling hero video, starring climate activist and Emmy Award winning actor Mark Ruffalo, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. star Chloe Bennett. We have Huron Mayor Ray Leone, Watts environmental justice leaders Mama Linda Cleveland and Jacqueline Badejo, and Oakland, California activist artist Fabiana Rodriguez. The new 40 Million Reasons to Go Electric campaign features an avant-garde, bright, and vibrant 2.5-minute animation paired with an original California kind of take on a neo-soul inspired music sung by a Barbadian-born Los Angeles-based singer, Aoni. So please check it out on our veloz.org, electricforall.org/campaign website. Look at the videos. We have different 15-second cut downs and a lot of social assets that are there for you to share through your network. So please share large, far and wide. And we're really excited about this launching this campaign. We've also launched late last year the Home Charging Advisor. So this is a tool for EV drivers to find all the level 2 home chargers that are available to them in their zip code, find the incentives that they are eligible for. And then later this year, by the end of March, we plan to launch the application assistance tool, which will provide one application for drivers to apply to all the incentives that they're eligible for. This is a new technology, a new tool that we're really excited to launch. We hope it will really help EV drivers kind of navigate the purchase and application process for home chargers and incentives. So please keep your eyes open for that. We have a lot of exciting activities or events coming up for 2021. First and foremost, we're planning our first in a series. We're calling it the Veloz Summit Series, March 9th. It will be virtual, but look for more information. It should be a really interesting agenda. So we'll be sharing that soon. We also have a great lineup of webinars coming up this year. You can go to our veloz.org/webinars page to learn more about the dates and the topics. And as we fill in the speakers and get registration ready, we'll share more about that on our website. But if you really want to know the latest about electric vehicles and Veloz, please sign up for our Veloz EV News. We have that featured on our homepage, and it's easy to sign up, and we're hoping to just grow that list and grow the information that we share with you all. So please make sure you're signed up to that list. We're going to talk, we have summits coming up, our webinars, and please follow Veloz and Electric for All on all of our different social handles and social platforms. So please do that. And mostly if you're not a member and you're interested in really knowing what's going on with Veloz and to really get the true benefits, please join Veloz. If you go to our homepage, you can go to the Join Us link and find out who to talk to and how to engage with Veloz and become a member. So please do that. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for your time today and for the discussion. And I really want to thank our speakers for your expertise and your candid discussion today. It was very valuable. And I know that I really enjoyed the discussion, and I'm sure all of our participants did. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.